Greetings, chess fans. My name is Arturs Neiksans. I'm the leading Latvian Grandmaster, and I'm continuing my video series about the most significant game during the past week. That's why I'm titling this series The Game of the Week. Last week we had a lot of very interesting tournaments, starting with Chennai Grandmaster Super Tournament, also the Women's Grand Prix event in Shymkent. Also, there was this very exciting World Youth Chess Championships in Brazil. But still, I think that all of the eyes were on the Chennai tournament, where Arjun Erigaisi, the madman in chess, so to speak, he was making history. He was reaching new heights in terms of the rating. And I would like to show you this game that really categorizes Arjun as a fantastic and uncompromising player, and playing it against also super sharp player Amin Tabatabaei, who is one of the best players from Iran. So top-notch chess. Let's just see what happened in this game. So Tabatabaei plays with white, Erigaisi plays with black. They opened up with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4. Nowadays, the Italian opening is just as worthy as the Rai Lopez by positioning the bishop on b5. So here, Arjun played a knight f6, hitting the opponent e4. White played d3, bishop c5. There's some nuances. Actually, this knight f6 invites white to play knight g5, hitting the opponent f7 so that black can continue to play d5. So here, Tabatabaei decided to decline it. Bishop c5, castles, d6, c3. So far, this is, again, pretty standard theory. White is threatening at some point to play b4, a4, expand at the queen side. And here black has some choices. Now a very modern trend is to play a5, maybe even a4 or rook b8 and b5. But here Erigaisi decided to play the classical approach a6, a4, and h6. Yeah, it feels like it's a bit waste of time, but by doing this here, what the young Indian does, he prepares an escape route for the bishop here so that it remains active, and h6 is just in case stopping any bishop g5 and knight g5 ideas. But there might be deeper ideas also involving this move. So here, Tabatabaei played rook e1, I suppose threatening to play d4, starting some action in the center. So bishop a7 deals with a d4 move. And now white plays b4. So you're probably wondering, why not short castle? Well, probably a short castle would have been a typical move of somebody else, but not Erigaisi. And Erigaisi here decided to play a very provocative move, g5. This is also the idea why he played h6 earlier, so the center is more or less closed, and Erigaisi felt that he can start a king's attack by playing g4. Now, naturally here it makes sense to meet an attack at the flank with a counter-strike in the center, but to be honest, this position is not very clear because Erigaisi can play g4, d takes on e5 is met by g takes on f3, takes on f6, knight e5, and suddenly in this chaotic position, if somebody has all the fun, it's only black. Yeah, and here after g4, if the knight retreats, black just collects the pawn on d4. Which might still be sacrificed, but it's a completely different game. So here, the young Iranian decided to play bishop e3, blocking this bishop on a7, makes perfect sense. Erigaisi traded on e3, and after rook takes on e3, he played g4. Yeah, it's a very unusual move, you might think, but the point here is that this knight h4 probably is an impossible move, because black can just take knight x on e4. A typical maneuver for these positions, as you can see, the queen on d8, hits the knight on h4, and black is just up a pawn. So that's why knight h4 is not the move here. White can play knight e1 and h5. So Erigaisi's plan is pretty easy. He wants to play h4, think about some g3 breakthrough, keep the king in the center, and look for sharp opportunities. So here Tabatabaei decided to counter-strike in the center as he's supposed to. Erigaisi played h4, and here bishop e2 was played by Tabatabaei. Engines slightly don't like it. I think it's perfectly reasonable move. And here, naturally, Erigaisi is thinking, all right, how do I start a king's attack? Well, apparently he could have played g3 right away. Now, the point of g3 is that after f takes, h takes, if there's rook g3, this drops the pawn on e4, and after h3, okay, here the engine starts to do some really funny stuff, because the engine here suggests that black could even play d5, which, to be honest, for me just makes no sense, because the rook on e3 is positioned on a potential x-ray with the black rook, but, well, what do I know? So the point here, e takes on d5 is knight e5, white is unable to exploit this weakening of the pawn on e5, and here, let's say, knight e2 could be played, d takes, knight e4, rook e4, f5, rook e3, and queen g5. Well, I think Erigaisi is a very dynamic player, but probably even for him, this was a bit too much, because you see the king on e8 is so exposed it feels very risky. Instead, Erigaisi played queen e7, hinting at a g3 idea, and just trying to keep things close for the moment. So Tabatabaei responded with d5, which is the strongest move in the position, knight b8, knight e2. So Erigaisi here was trying to bring the queen closer to the king side and look for the g3 breakthrough. As you can see, engines slightly don't like this choice, but again, we have two humans playing here, not engines. So here, Tabatabaei played knight f1, queen h6, c4, and now this position quite resembles the king's Indian defense. So you see, white is aiming for the c5 push, try to create a weakness on d6 or maybe somehow crash through at the queen side. At the same time, black is trying to do some real harm to white at the king side with most likely g3, because h3 will be met by g3 and the king side is closed. So that's where Erigaisi played right now g3, and this is a pawn sacrifice. So the point is to open up some files. Tabatabaei decided to take it, and play h3. Well, rook takes on g3 drops the pawn on e4, knight takes on g3 drops the pawn on h2, so h3 makes perfect sense. Here, Erigaisi played knight b to d7. Of course, it's very tempting to sacrifice the bishop on h3 here, but again, Erigaisi at the same time, even though he's looking for some hostilities there, he's trying to develop his queenside pieces first. So he played knight e7. Here Tabatabaei played c5, and this is not even a pawn sacrifice, because after d takes, b takes, and knight c5, this opens up the queenside a bit too much. So I suppose here Tabatabaei could just play simply bishop f3, maybe collect the pawn on g3, play rook c1, and black is just not feeling really secure with the king in the center. So there's no more any long castle, king f8. I'm not sure what it really does, so I'm pretty sure that Erigaisi was not even looking at his pawn on c5 at all. So he proceeded to play knight f8, and his idea is pretty obvious. He wants to play knight g6, knight f4, and potentially sack something on h3. So Tabatabei's plan was pretty obvious. Takes, and queen c1. He was threatening somehow do some damage here at the c file, maybe play rook g3 and hint at the queen trade. And this is where Erigaisi starts to play for real. He decided to sacrifice the bishop. So bishop takes on h3, this threat was obviously always there, but the point is, after g takes on h3, he did not take on h3. Because the point is, after queen takes on h3, white can proceed with bishop f3, there's no mate on h2, there's no mate on h1, bishop g2 is just bishop g2, white can always bring more pieces on defense with something like rook a2, and there's just no follow-up. That's why Erigaisi, after g takes on h3, played knight g6, which is a very, very poisonous move, because knight f4 is incoming, and the threat of queen takes on h3 is always in the air. So here Tabatabaei decided to play rook takes on g3, now comes knight f4, not only with the fork threat, but also capturing h3 with the knight. So here the young Iranian decided to respond with queen e3, followed by knight h3, and now white has no choice but to take on h3. Otherwise, let's say king g2, we are talking about most like either knight f4 check, or even here engine says knight g5 is an incredibly strong move, and the point is, after queen takes on g5, check on h1, here there's suddenly some fork ideas on e4, and white simply loses the queen. So all of this was not played. Here Tabatabaei decided to give up part of the material, takes on h3, the pawn on e4 has to be protected, otherwise black will form two passed pawns in the center, and rook c8. So the position is about balanced, because white has two minor pawns versus the rook and a pawn, so it's about equal. So now it really matters who controls the initiative. And with the next moves, you're going to see both players are furiously fighting for it. So here, rook b1 was played. Tabatabaei is trying to create some targets at the queen side. Erigaisi charges forward. Knight e2 defense, king e7, activating king just in case protecting the pawn on d6. a5, this is a big idea. b takes, and rook b6 trying to get to the pawn on a6. Knight e7, king goes here, knight f8. So Erigaisi was looking for ways to get the knight on f4 for some attacking prospects. b5 here, takes, bishop g2, rook h6, here, rook b6, and you can see here black is not even thinking about protecting the pawn on a6. He goes forward with knight f4. Also for white, he doesn't really have a choice. Since you say A, you have to say B as well. So he collected the pawn on a6, rook a3, putting the rook behind the passed pawn. That is really textbook defense. Rook a8 check, king g7, a6, and rook a2. Now things are starting to heat up because not only Erigaisi has positioned the rook on a perfect square, trying to slow down this pawn, he's also creating some targets at the opponent's king. You see the knight on d2 is under attack and there's some unpleasant pins. Even more, after knight f3, suddenly there's f5. So the point is, after e takes on f5, there's always going to be a move like e4. And it's not so easy to deal with this because if this knight leaves, the knight on d2 is under attack. This pawn is going nowhere. Now that's why here Tabatabaei thought for a while and decided, okay, let's repeat the position. So check, here, check, here, check. Draw? No. Erigaisi continues. He plays king f6, taking a lot of risks. Now here, it was Tabatabaei's turn to make a mistake. He played bishop f1, which looks incredibly human move, and you're going to see why this is a very human move. So he protects the pawn on a6, and he wants to relieve the rook from the a7 so that eventually he makes a progress. Actually, the best move here was rook d7, hitting the pawn on d6. Here, I suppose f takes on e4 has to be played. By the way, what happens after rook takes on a6? I forgot to check it. Yeah, bishop f1. Not easy to spot also this quiet move from afar, giving up the strong pawn on a6. And also the point is after rook b6, there's knight c4, hitting the rook, hitting the pawn, and after rook a6, I think knight takes on d6 already is very good. Hitting again the rook here, and white's two minor pieces for the rook start to become really strong. Either way, so here after rook d7, the best move for black is f takes on e4, you cannot take it, that's a pin. And now we get some crazy computer moves. So this check does make sense, king g7, rook d7, king f8, and now white just plays a7, which is still pretty normal. E takes on f3, the bishop is under attack, the knight is under attack, and engine says it's just equal. So it's so difficult even to spot this. Rook takes on d2, king f3, white is down the rook, but again after rook a2, rook d8 check, white promotes the pawn, and the position in end is equal. One rook each, one minor piece each, and a pawn each, so it's just a draw. So Tabatabaei missed it, and he found something else. So he played bishop f1, which is technically a mistake. Now his idea was to play bishop c4, hit the rook here, so if the rook leaves the second rank, there's knight takes on e4, incredibly strong move, hitting the king and the pawn. And if here Erigaisi plays rook c2, as it was played in the game, Tabatabaei's idea was to play rook d7. So where's the big idea? If here Erigaisi would take the knight on f3, now you see there's suddenly going to be rook d6 check, king, let's say g7, and simply take on h6. So it's a very paradoxical position because after king h6, a7, rook d2, and king f3, suddenly this pawn cannot be stopped. There is no rook a2. The bishop here takes care of this move, and any checks, there's no checks. Black cannot save this pawn from promoting. But what happened is that here Iranian Grandmaster simply missed this very sneaky move, rook h3. And now it changes everything because Erigaisi decided not to take the knight immediately, he wants to take with the rook. Now here a7 no longer works because he's going to take on f3 with the rook. For example, rook takes on f3, king e1, and rook c1, mate on the board. Now after rook h3 here, Tabatabaei decided to play king e3. Already he probably felt that he is losing. E takes on f3, check on e4, king f5, fearlessly going forward. Knight takes on d6, king g6. White is running out of checks, and after bishop f1, another cool move by the top Indian grandmaster, rook e2 check, which is almost like a mate, except if white decides to take it, black forms a pass pawn, which is promoting. Let me just show it to you. Takes, king d2, check, here, check, and this pawn promotes with a check as well. So what happened in the game? Tabatabaei resigned. And with this victory, Erigaisi had scored essentially 3.5 points out of 4 in the first 4 rounds, and his live rating was 2,809, making him officially the second best player in the world. So later he would lose some rating, and he did not win the tournament, but I mean, this game was really wild, and I think we can expect a lot of great things from the young Indian. From me, that's it. There's going to be another game of the week next week, but if you like this video, please press like, leave your comments what you think about this game. Maybe you spotted another exciting game, and of course, if you're a fan of my content, you would like to see more, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you. Arturs signing off.